Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and as a podcaster in particular, I'm so very excited about today's episode because we are joined by a very brilliant marketing and advertising mind, especially when it comes to the audio format. And I'll also say that as someone who, anytime I listen to a TV commercial or radio commercial, those jingles always get stuck in my head. So I'm going to have some personal questions that I'm going to ask today's guest, because if you've ever wondered what's the difference between a jingle that gets stuck in your head versus an ad that actually moves buyers to action, then you are going to love today's guest. His name is Buck Robinson. Buck is not only a serial entrepreneur, but he's the son of an advertising entrepreneur as well. So both advertising and entrepreneurship definitely run in his veins. He's started and grown multiple companies over the last 30 years, including one that made the Inc. 100 for the fastest growing companies in the United States. His latest venture, called Retail and Response, represents the culmination of a lifetime of learning about his strengths, passions, and where he really feels that he can build the greatest value both for his clients and for himself and his business partner. And like I said, we're going to talk about audio advertising, probably marketing channels that you may not have thought of in recent years. So I'm excited about this one. I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Buck Robinson. All right, Buck, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it, Brian.
Heck yes, I'm excited. It actually feels like a little bit of an inception thing where we're talking about audio advertising on a podcast. Such a fun platform to have you on, Buck. But before we dive straight into that stuff, take us beyond the bio. Who's Buck? How did you start doing all these cool things?
Well, it's interesting because I started, like I said, I've really almost never worked in any industry other than this. So I would love to be able to say that I've had this broad depth of experiences in life. The reality is I've had a very narrow experience set, but it's given me a lot of depth in this particular field. So I started off working with my dad. He went back all the way to like live television pitchman days on TV. So like when they would turn the camera and then somebody would do a commercial and then they'd turn camera, getting back to the programming, he was one of those guys. And when I was growing up, my dad was the advertising agency behind an iconic brand called Ronco. Like, so the Ronco record vacuum, the Ronco Mr. Microphone, all those different items that were very famous in the 70s. And so, like growing up, our team was the Ronco Raiders. And my dad, never missing an opportunity for advertising, instead of having our last names on the back of our Little League jerseys, had the name of products. So I was Mr. Microphone. The catcher was like the record vacuum. We had like the food dehydrator and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, to say that it's either genetic or it's been pounded into me one way or another. I'm always thinking about things in terms of their advertising and how to be able to convey the value proposition in a way that's going to most resonate with the target audience.
I love that, especially that tangible story from childhood. I'm picturing you running around as Mr. Microphone, which really leads me. I mean, I would imagine that every single parent on the sideline was looking at that and saying, that's cute. It's memorable. Here we are, Buck, all these years later talking about that example, which really, let's start at that super high level of what's the point of advertising? Because this is cute and memorable. And obviously we're going to throw some action oriented stuff in there as well. But at a really high level, how do you even begin to view the purpose of advertising?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's very important that the agency or whomever is helping the client to be able to articulate the brand proposition and the value proposition of their particular product, that they be in alignment with the objectives of that client. Sometimes the agency kind of has their own agenda, and I'm certainly not throwing anybody under the bus, but we've seen it where an agency becomes too cute for their own good, and all they really want to do is show the world how creative they are. And in the process, the client kind of suffers. And I've just never ascribed to that philosophy. For us, it's what do we need to do to be able to make our client be successful, because their success is our success. So very clearly understanding Who are we trying to talk to? What benefits are we going to bring into their life as a result of either this product or service? What can they reasonably expect? But really identifying the problem and the solution. I know that sounds so cliche and everybody says the same, but really being able to say, in the first 5 to 7 seconds of the commercial, if you've got this problem, or if this is a problem that you are facing, here's a solution that you may not be aware of. And it's really quite formulaic. I know that a lot of people like to try and overly complicate things and show off, like I say, how creative they are. And there are elements of creativity to be able to make that resonate in a noisy world these days. But really what it boils down to is being able to, again, here's who needs to listen. In my case, I'm an audio commercial. So here's who should listen rather than just kind of tuning out. Here's what your situation is today. Here's what it can look like after you've started using this product or service. Once again, kind of reiterating. So if this is your problem, here's a new solution. Why are we a little different from everything else? So that if there's in the back of their mind kind of saying, I've heard this before, something that differentiates this product from any other competitors that might be out there, to truly say it is quite different, so you should give it a try. And then at the very end of the commercial, kind of telling them where to do or what to do in terms of how to get their hands on it. So in our particular cases, typically it's go to this website or go to this bricks and mortar location. So go to Amazon or go to CVS or go to Walmart or go to Target or whatever it may be, so that the person who's just now heard this commercial and recognizes that this is something that they at least want to learn more about, maybe even say, yes, I'm ready to get it. Tell them where to go to do that and do so and kind of give them those instructions. We don't play in the realm of subtlety where it's like, next time you're thinking about it, please keep us in mind. No, I'm telling them, like, go there, do this, change your life, take advantage of this right now.
Hearing you say these things, Buck, it not only sounds to me like there is somewhat of a formula to be successful in this, but it also sounds like it's a somewhat simple formula, to be honest. And obviously you have decades of experience in this, so you don't overcomplicate things. It's why I love that Einstein quote of, if you want to impress someone, make it complicated. If you want to help someone, make it simple. I've always loved that quote. But really hearing you talk about this, my listener brain, because obviously I'm not just a podcast host, I love audio content. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to a heck of a lot of YouTube as well. And my mind really jumps to the advertisers that I hear most frequently. I can think about, and a lot of these companies have offered us sponsorships in the VPN space. There are so many VPN companies, Buck, that are trying to get on every podcast in the world. And honestly, as a listener, sometimes I don't even resonate with their messaging because it's just, you hear it so frequently that it's the pure volume of the messaging that sticks with me. How much does that play into it? Because too many people, when we talk about Facebook ads, they think, I'll launch a Facebook ad and it'll either work or it won't work. But of course, longevity, consistency, these are assets in the paid digital space. Is the same true in audio?
Yeah, it is. And I think that it's always very important to be able to say, in the beginning especially, there tends to be a gravitation towards what I call kitchen sink advertising. Like, we want to try and throw everything but the kitchen sink into this ad. And what they end up doing when they do that is they end up giving nothing. Like, nothing has any real substance to it. We're just superficially talking about a lot of this stuff. The other thing, and this is sometimes where we have to have very honest conversations with the client, is that they tend to like to focus on features instead of benefits. And like, it's got this and it's got that, and we use this, and this is special, and kind of sorting through that and really saying, okay, how much of that really matters to the audience and how much of that matters to you? Because that's where I kind of have to walk that fine line of, like, I understand that that's something that's really important to you, but if I'm, like you just said, putting on my listener or audience ears, I'm thinking that doesn't really matter to me. What matters to the person that you're trying to sell this to? And what we do through kind of an optimization process is get to what is that, or are those one or two really salient points that really, really draw in that listener and really draw in that audience. And I'll give you an example. Sometimes it's not just one. Like, for instance, we have a product that if they were to say, who our target audience is, it would be adults 35 plus. Well, that's a very broad audience, right? And what we found is that there is more of a male skewing version of this commercial and a more female skewing version of the commercial, because those two different groups buy the product, same product, for very different reasons. So being able to come through the testing process to understand how different aspects of the audience react to or respond to the product for different reasons is vital, rather than trying to come up with a one size fits all. Then once we've done that, it's a matter of, coming back to your kind of sustainability or longevity, is how can we continue to tell that story from different perspectives in order to be able to take people who are what I call fence sitters, sitting on the fence and like, oh, I'm interested, but I'm not quite ready to move to action yet, and get them over into the boat. How do we get them off the fence and get them into moving towards action of buying the product? And again, that is a process of not just beating them into submission. It's really trying to come up with different variations on the theme so that we're able to flip the little light switch in their brain that goes, that's what I was looking for, or that's what I was waiting to hear. Now I'm in.
Yeah, Buck, I'm going to ask you this next question. It's not going to be the most perfectly articulated question, but I trust that you're going to have some really valuable insights here, because anytime I watch TV with my parents, for example, especially with my dad, we'll watch sports games together, and there are so many commercials that really irritate him. I'm going to call out Liberty, that jingle at the end, Liberty, Liberty, Liberty. We've all heard it a million times. And my dad always says, like, why do they always run the exact same thing? And where my head goes is, just being a business owner myself, is I'm just like, if they keep running it, it's because it's working. They don't actually care if you like it or not. And I feel like growing up, I went to business school, and growing up, so many times they trick us into thinking, your target market, when you do these panel surveys, they have to like your marketing. They have to like your advertising. It actually seems to me, the more that I get into the advertising world and talk to amazing experts like you, it's not about your audience liking it. What is it then? If that statement that I just said is true, what is it about? Is likability a factor?
Well, so it's interesting that, you could have 20 different people on here and 20 different from this industry and 20 different opinions that go along with it. And so my particular perspective on it is, there's a big difference between, and I've never had the luxury of working in some of the Madison Avenue pure brand space. So I will be the first to admit that when it comes to playing in that sandbox, that is not one that I've ever had the luxury of enjoying. So somebody who uses terminology like mind share or recallability and things like that, those aren't variables that matter to me. I'm in the sales business, and I don't try and put any lipstick on that. Like, I'm not embarrassed to say that my job is to sell stuff. So if I'm selling stuff, it's working. If it's not selling stuff, it's not working. No matter how many people are like, oh, I love your commercial, or I think it's so funny, or every time I'm humming, whatever. I say it all the time. How many times are you watching TV or listening to the radio or whatever? And this is all the time. My kids are saying, you can hum the commercial, you can hum the jingle, you can recall some of it. Does that ever motivate you to call? Does that ever motivate you, even when you do need to make a decision, say about insurance or whatever, to be like, let's go with that Liberty because I really like the commercials. Again, we like some of the commercials. We've never once said that's the company for us. So I don't know what their definition of working is, but to me, working purely comes down to, are we creating positive and profitable return on investment for every dollar that client is investing in their advertising? Are they seeing that $2 to $3 in incremental revenue that's as closely attributable to that? And in today's world, I just was reading an article this morning about the fallacy of attribution models and how in a digital world, even Google and Meta are abandoning a lot of the attribution models that they have because they realize that they're a lot of smoke and mirrors. But in our world, again, it's not perfect. But if I can be able to show, and I can, a very clear correlation between the amount of people that are going and searching for our particular client's products on Amazon in direct response to the commercials. So like, here's a week where we're running a bunch of commercials. Here's where their searches. Here's a week where we're turning the commercials off. Here's where their searches. So, those two things correlate 1-to-1. That's where I can be able to say, okay, that's where we're actually impacting consumer behavior. Not recall, not brand awareness, not mind share. Actual going on the keyboard, clicking along and looking and following the instructions that we gave them to take action.
I'm so glad that you said that, Buck, because even as a consumer, and I'm from the Boston area, which is where Liberty is based, and even after decades of hearing that jingle, you called it out so directly, and I've never even realized it about myself. I've never thought about switching to Liberty, whereas I've gone to Geico.com because if there's one thing I know about Geico, it's that they'll save me 15% or less. And so that speaks so much to the principles that you're introducing us to. But I want to dive deeper into your unique approach and especially your business, because hearing you talk about, I'm in the sales business. Here's the thing. When we talk about advertising, we start to go the Mad Men approach of how creative can we be. I find it so fascinating that you've carved out an incredible niche within the world of retail. It's right inside of your company name, Retail and Response. A lot of people might not realize, oh, hey, if I'm selling something, if I do have a retail-based business, I can still be profitable with audio advertising. And I think that speaks to a couple objections that I'm sure you hear all the time, Buck, which is, one, it only works for some businesses. Maybe I have to be a national brand for audio advertising to work for me. And two, probably a big part of that is it's got to be too expensive for me, the little guy. It's got to be too expensive for me who has retail products. How do you even begin to navigate those objections?
Yeah, maybe I've heard that once or twice. But yeah, no, I would say that there's a lot of misperceptions and inherent biases or preconceived notions about what is or is not involved and what is or is not effective. First things first, there is within the consumer product space a very popular misconception that somehow getting your product onto the shelf is that, like, that's the finish line, like pop the champagne. And that is not the finish line. That is the starting line. And in today's ultra competitive world where so many different companies in each vertical are vying for that same shelf space, the reality is that you have about 90 days to either show that retailer that your product is a better use of that square footage, or else you're out. So as hard as you worked and as many years as you struggled and all the things that you did to be able to accomplish getting that placement, if you weren't putting advertising and driving people in the store to try and actively seek out your product, you are running the risk of getting shown the door and getting all of that product shipped back to you within 1 quarter. And what hurts my heart is that we often get calls from companies that are like, hey, listen, I know I didn't take your advice before, but we've been on the shelf for 60 days and we just got a very uncomfortable phone call from our buyer telling us we're about to be delisted, and I've got 30 days. What can you do? And the reality is, listen, I'm not David Hasselhoff. I'm not coming to save you from drowning, man. So I tried to tell you should watch the Riptides, but you didn't pay attention. And now you want me to come in and save you when I have little or no time to be able to do so. So part of what we do is to really try to educate brands to be able to say the timing aspect of making sure that your messaging and your advertising is properly correlated with the availability of the product on shelf is key. Secondly, when you look at, and I go to a lot of these different shows and things and talk to a lot of different consumer product companies, and they're asked by the retailers point blank, what are you going to do to support this product? So like, what's your marketing plan? And when every single one of them says, well, we're on TikTok and we have some influencers and we have this and we have that, and that is absolute noise to the retailer. They look at it and go, that's not going to put people in my stores. Like, that is not what I wanted to hear. So as much as there's a lot of shiny objects out there right now in the marketing world that are new and exciting, and everybody seems to be gravitating towards them, and the herd is running in that direction, and as a result, pricing for those things is astronomical in some cases simply because there is so much demand. The tried and true media of television, radio, offline to a certain degree, as we like to call it, has created real opportunity for brands that may have, honestly, 5 or 6 years ago, not been able to afford it. But now they can, and they should, because those are the proven methods for being able to actually drive people into stores. Those are the things that for decades have produced the foot traffic that retailers count on. And if you can be able to buy them now at a fraction of the price that you would have been able to buy them before, listen, I'm an old school advertising guy. There's a mantra that I 100% subscribe to, which is at the right price, all media works. So it's really a matter of economics. If you're looking at it and you're saying, hey, listen, I could be doing this and it's at a 10 or 12 or 20 or $30 cost per thousand, or I could be doing this and it's at $1 or $1.50 or $2 cost per thousand to deliver 1,000 impressions. So I have a limited budget and I can get, $2 per thousand or $20 per thousand. It's not rocket science to try and figure out where's your dollar going to go farther. Where are you actually going to deliver more impressions, as long as they're well targeted to the right audience, to tell them about the value proposition and why they should be buying your product. So I'd love to be able to, again, I would love to be able to say it's all about the uber creativity or the incredible technology or this. It's not. It's simplicity. It's simple. It's a simple way of talking to somebody in a cost-effective way that allows you to deliver your message with enough frequency and well targeted to be able to move the needle.
Yeah, it really is that simple. But Buck, for so many people, they forget about, you called it out right there of the where. So many people forget about all the new and old wares that they can be advertising, and they do chase those shiny objects. I love the fact as a podcaster that you threw a little bit of shade there on TikTok, because in literally 60 seconds of being on TikTok, and I love scrolling through TikTok, that is for sure my guilty pleasure, but in 60 seconds of being on TikTok, I could see 10 to 15 different things. Literally in 60 seconds. That's how quickly we're all scrolling past, which you and I are 23 minutes into a nerdy business conversation and people are still here with us. And I think that's the power of audio. It is long form. It is much more intimate. It is much more engaging for an engaged audience. So introduce us to some of those wares that people can advertise on. I mean, I love the fact, just crawling through your website, traditional radio, satellite, podcasts, streaming. There's so many options. What does that platform mix look like?
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? So a few years back, the conversation would have been about AM and FM radio. And then Sirius and XM came on the scene with satellite, and that provided a really cost-efficient national way of being able to deliver your message. And now, of course, the audio space has evolved and expanded, which is really, again, something that I constantly am coming back to and saying that audio engagement, I know is a fancy term for just people listening to stuff, but audio engagement has actually grown. People are listening and consuming more audio now than ever. And they're doing so in a variety of different places. Okay, so like, again, 10, 15 years ago, you would be talking about drive time and listening in the car and all of those kind of things. Those things still happen, but people aren't, especially since the pandemic, people don't have the same kind of traditional patterns of consuming audio in the car. So they're consuming audio on their Alexa as they're making dinner. They're consuming audio on their headphones as they're working out at the gym. They're consuming audio like all throughout their life. And part of what our job is to be able to try and figure out where is the best place to reach them, when is the best time to reach them, so that they're going to have maximum receptiveness to that message. And again, I keep coming back to, it's about the economics, dummy. It's like, how do we find a really cost-effective way to be able to deliver that message to the right audience in a way that's going to produce a positive return on investment for that client's dollar? So I'm oversimplifying something that really, there's a lot of companies out there that will tell you they have these algorithms and this, that, and the other thing. The reality is that it really does boil down to just understanding your audience. And I think one of the things that it, again, comes back to is understanding how to tell the story of your product. Audio is a story medium. It is a medium where it's all about explanation, not demonstration. So I'm not going to say you won't believe your eyes and like, can you believe what you're seeing and blah, blah, blah. No, it's going to be, let me tell you a story about how this is going to change your life. And part of our challenge is to not only figure out what that story is and what the salient parts are within a 60 or 30 second time frame, which is a real challenge. I have a lot of clients who are like, I want to talk about all this stuff. I'm like, that's great. That's 5 minutes. Like, we need to slice that up into little sound bites that are going to allow us to work within time. I can't bend time. So that is a challenge, but it's also to talk about not just what's the story, but who's the best person to tell that story. So in some cases, it might be a very passionate founder or inventor of the product, like talking about the genesis of how this product came to be. They had this problem. They couldn't find a solution in the marketplace, so they created it. It might be testimonials from people that target audience can relate to. Like, that sounds just like me, or that's a person who I can relate to. All right. It might be just a straight, sexy voiceover, or somebody who's got a really resonant, dark, deep, resonant voice. Those are all some of the different tools that we have in our tool shed to try and accomplish what comes back to the primary objective, which is using advertising as the engine that is going to grow the client's business, that is going to give them a predictable and scalable way of being able to grow their business against competition, against just apathy, people not knowing the products there. I mean, the number one thing, a lot of our clients talk about their competitors. The reality is that if somebody's in a space where they don't have any competitors, that's almost as challenging, because nobody knows why they need the product. Like, they don't even know that there's a solution that's available to them. So sometimes it's easier when there's a lot of awareness to be able to say how I'm different. Like, I'm not just a me too, here's how I'm different. But if you're in a space where nobody really knows that this is available, then you really have to work hard to educate that consumer about what the product is and why now, for the first time, there's a solution to the problem they've been facing. I think about, like, we had a client, and it doesn't really matter what the client's name is, but suffice it to say, it was a personal use medical device that, when you saw it on TV, didn't exactly have the sexiest demonstration associated with it. So why they went to TV first, I'm not 100% sure, but we were able to make it very, very successful in radio, simply because, again, the visuals weren't exactly appealing, but the story and the value proposition and the problem solution were very easily articulated in an audio-only environment. And that allowed that campaign. I mean, when we started, people laughed at, they're like, radio, what are you going to do with radio with this? And then we were able to make radio actually bigger than television, simply because, again, it married itself to a medium where a story could be told and the audience could immediately connect to that and say, hey, that I've never heard of that before, but that sounds like what I've been looking for. I'm going to check it out.
Yeah, Buck, I'll tell you this. I'll call it out publicly, because a big part of the reason why our team was so excited to reach out to you and have you in particular on the show to talk about this is because you have such a strong emphasis on ROI. It's so clear in everything that you do, is that you don't subscribe to vanity metrics. I feel like that's so prevalent in the world of marketing and advertising in so many different ways. People who measure engagement, whatever that statistic means, people who measure likes and follows and subscribers and website traffic. It's so clear to me how much you really value and appreciate ROI. But even more than that, it's so clear to me that you practice what you preach. Here you are talking about telling stories, and you have been telling stories all throughout our conversation today. And I'm so grateful for that. Even the way that you started out with your dad sponsoring the youth sports team and everyone running around with those product names on the back. So I think that those types of things are so cool, and they do leave an impact. But it also means I have no idea how you're going to top all this. To answer my final question, I ask it at the end of every episode, and that is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? Knowing that we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, and also knowing that you're not just an advertising genius, you are also one of us. You're a fellow entrepreneur. So with all of that in mind, what's that one piece of advice you want to leave listeners with today?
Ooh, that's a great question. And first of all, I will say I'm incredibly biased. I can't imagine not being an entrepreneur. We live in a country where where that possibility isn't something that's just a fantasy. People are doing it every single day, and I think that's one of the truly most wonderful things about the America and American dream is the ability to allow somebody to be able to live out their entrepreneurial aspirations. I think the number one thing I would say is, don't let anybody sugarcoat it and tell you you're doing it because it's a fast way to make a buck and because it is something that is going to, yes, you may make a lot of money doing this. And certainly statistics would tell you that more millionaires are made because of entrepreneurialism than any other facet of the economy. But don't do it because of that. Do it because you love it. Do it because you recognize, as I would say in my own case, I'm the world's worst employee. I just can't sit there and have somebody tell me that this is what we should be doing and not say, why? That doesn't make any sense. That's dumb. But hey, I just want to get my paycheck next Friday. So let me just go along with, whatever the company line is. So do it because you love it. Do it because you have a passion for it. Do it because you really feel like it's something that's going to give you fulfillment, because there's going to be hard times. And while there may be ultimate payoffs at the end that make you look back and say, wow, I'm so glad that I did that, you can't just live for some distant point in the future. You have to be enjoying it every single day. I get out of bed, bouncing out of bed. In fact, I was up at 3:00 this morning thinking about a bunch of stuff that I have to do for clients today because I love it. And I love it not because it's something that is for everyone. I totally get that. I totally appreciate that not everybody wants to live this kind of a life. And honestly, if you're getting married or you're married, make sure your spouse is on board with the lifestyle as well, because everybody's in. This is a team game. There's ups and there's downs. And what I would just tell you is, don't let that dissuade you. Stick to it. If this is what you truly know you're meant to do, and this is what truly makes you happy, weather the storms, learn from them, adapt to them, pivot, do what you need to do, but stick with it. Stick with it. That type of persistence is ultimately what makes it all worthwhile.
Boom. I love that. Listeners, I rarely do this, a little behind the scenes stuff, but I will share with every single one of you listeners that before Buck and I got together here today, one thing that he wrote to me is that he's going to cut it straight while we're on the air together here today. And in that piece of advice, Buck, I feel like that's the real stuff right there that people don't say about entrepreneurship. And it's a harsh truth. Nonetheless, it is a truth in and of itself. And I think that is such a strong piece of advice, because it's not going to be easy. It sounds like, you're very clear for all of our listeners that there are going to be downs along the way. So don't be in it for quick money. You're not going to make quick money. You can make money. You're not going to make quick money. And I think that it's really important to recognize all of those things. So that's, in over 1,200 episodes, that's one of my favorite pieces of advice that we've ever got here on the air. So Buck, my one regret is that we are limited by time together, but I'm very excited for listeners to go deeper into the journey, because I can safely say that you are the guest that we've invited to introduce all of our listeners all around the world into the world of audio advertising. So I'm very excited for them to check out your website. So drop those links on us. For listeners who want to learn more, where should they go from here?
Yep, it's very straightforward. It's retailandresponse.com. So as the name implies, we're in the retail and response business. So retailandresponse.com.
Yes, and listeners, you already know the drill. We're dropping that link down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. So if you're on the go, if you're driving, if you're at the gym, if you're in the shower, no matter where you are, don't worry, click the link right down below in the show notes. Otherwise, Buck, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Brian, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.